Thanks. My name is DonBatchelder. I would like to thank Dick and Michelle for giving us the opportunity to address this group. And thank you for your involvement and your interest. Every 4 years, you, the citizens, are asked to elect and essentially hire someone to represent you in the business of government for the next 4 years.
We can't see you.
Elections are an interesting combination of popularity contest and assessing which candidate is more competent to efficiently run the business of government. Given the near-term decrease in property tax, as well as the potential decrease in funding from state and federal funds, including PILT and Highway Users Trust Fund for road maintenance, as well as the trend at the state and local and federal level to push more responsibilities to the local level, I would argue that in this election, competencies are the most critical component an elected official should possess. I was raised in a small agricultural town in New Hampshire and moved to Ridgeway in 1977. Since that time, I've had the opportunity and pleasure of serving the community continually from 1980 until 2011 in a number of appointed and elected positions. 16 years on the Ridgeway Planning Commission, 12 years mayor of Ridgeway, 4 years as town manager of Ridgeway, 11 years on the Ridgeway School Board, and 8 years as the Ouray County Commissioner. I've also served on a number of volunteer positions, mainly dealing with school issues as soccer coach, and probably the most critical one was in looking at design and construction of the new high school and gym. The following are my answers to the questions posed in the agenda for this forum. My top priorities would be, first, instituting efficiencies as a cultural norm at all levels of county government, essentially the business of government, with a focus on roads and land use, areas that the commissioners have direct control over. Some specific items I would push are, but they are definitely not limited to, continue going over the land use code to eliminate discrepancies, contradictory provisions, and language that creates unintended consequences, all with the intent of making the land use code predictable and easier to administrate. Work with Road and Bridge for training so the roads are adequately crowned and subsequently require less maintenance. Investigate the viability of chip seal on the most traveled roads. Second priority would be to implement the goals and objectives of the master plan through the regulatory process, tying water rights to the land by incentives in the development process, and other tools that could be used to help preserve our working agricultural landscape, and working with the mining community to ensure that this segment of our economy can be viable and coexist with tourism and other users of high country roads. As to what differentiates me from my opponent and what I'd do differently if elected, the first part of the question I will leave for you to decide. The second part of the question cannot be definitively answered, as I know what I do, but I don't necessarily know what Pat would do. I will offer this observation. Pat has indicated the intent and belief in a collaborative process in addressing issues, and I applaud that intent. However, there are two significant cautionary notes that one needs to take into consideration. First, a number of people tend to act as if having a long-term, in-depth conversation about an issue constitutes a solution to the issue. And second, most importantly, just because someone is not at the table for a conversation does not mean that they don't have a vested interest in the outcome. I think my two top strengths after my experience are, first, the ability to analyze complex issues and subsequently clearly and concisely communicate those issues. And the second, because I know and communicate with a large number of people in our diverse population, I can use my problem-solving skills to reach decisions that are generally acceptable to the county population. I've already addressed budget, agriculture, and mining in my priorities. My view on visual impact regulations is what currently exists has worked. Like any regulation, it could be made better. In assessing whether a regulation is effective and accomplishing its goal and looking at potential changes, there are a number of steps I would take prior to looking at a total rewrite. You as people typically do not buy a new car because the windshield wipers aren't working. If the county is looking at dramatic and expansive changes to a complex and controversial regulation like visual impact, there are two steps I would recommend. First, ensure there's broad-based support and the majority of the people support it. And second, if it's implemented, do it in a slow and incremental way so there's not a negative impact on the building industry. In dealing with economic growth, the county's role should be creating an environment where economic growth thrives. Water rights are private property rights, governed by the state and state agencies. It is entirely appropriate to have a collaborative conversation among stakeholders. However, my previous cautionary notes on a collaborative process apply to this. Broadband availability is extremely important. It's something that was promised to the citizens of the state, and it should be pursued. You as voters are hiring someone to run the county government for your benefit. An important part of your decision process should be what the potential elected official has accomplished. When I was elected as mayor, the town was virtually bankrupt. There were no capital reserves, and development regulations were almost non-existent. When I left the town, there were adequate and healthy reserves. There were development standards that other communities used as an example of good government, and the budget was in the black and in excellent shape. When I was appointed to fill a vacancy on the school board, the school community was polarized. Many students were leaving to attend school in Ouray. The view among students was that being smart and achieving good grades was not cool. Staff morale was low, and the reserves were in poor shape. When I left the school board, Ridgeway School was ranked in the top 7% of schools in the state. There was a new high school, and the finances were in excellent shape. When I was first elected as county commissioner, the county had gone through 4 administrators in 4 years. The budget process was almost impossible to understand, and there was no central record of where the county funds were, and the minutes were the primary record of BOCC actions. When I left the county, there was an administrator who had been there for 7 years and is still there, with a clear set of responsibilities and expectations. The budget documents we formulated were used by other counties as best practice. All county funds were tracked and accounted for. Capital reserves were healthy, and BOCC actions were recorded by resolution, such that if you wanted to track an issue, it was much easier. So if I have stated before, in every elected and appointed position I had served, the entity was in better shape financially and operationally when I left than when I started. Obviously, based on my skills and competencies, performance, I believe that I am the most qualified candidate. My promise to you, should you honor me with your support, is that I will work hard as possible to continue that trend. Thank you very much.